What is up, RPG and Final Fantasy fans? In this video, I'll be ranking all of the dungeons from worst to best in the original Final Fantasy. I will be doing the PSP version of this game since that has the most dungeons. And if you don't care for any of the PSP dungeons, sorry. I guess you can skip those sections. I will have the good old timestamps, so hopefully that helps. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, so let's dive right into it with the first dungeon in the game, which is the Chaos Shrine Present. The Chaos Shrine Present is a decent first dungeon. It's nothing too special, but it's not bad either. It's just small. It doesn't contain too much. There are a few treasure chests in the Chaos Shrine, a couple that require the Mystic Key that you get later in the game. And you fight the first boss battle of the entire Final Fantasy franchise, Garland. While it is pretty empty and boring, it is pretty cool because it has some treasures that you can get without the Mystic Key and some that you can't. Has iconic Final Fantasy moments, and it being the first dungeon of the whole series does give it some extra bonus brownie points for me. So, I'm going to give it a C tier. I know that... I know saying that it's like the first dungeon in the series and all that would make me want to put it higher, but actually no, I'll put it in B tier because it's just iconic. I usually don't do that. I don't say, oh, something's iconic, that means it's good. But I think I just have to this time. And the scenes with Garland and stuff, I mean, the main antagonist of the game really just shows up here, so that's good. He doesn't show up for a while after that. So yeah, I think this is a pretty alright dungeon. I'm going to give it a B tier. In all actuality, it's probably a C or a D, but since it's the first dungeon in the Final Fantasy franchise, I'm going to give it a little bit of a pass. Alright, next we have the Marsh Cave, which I am not a big fan of. That's going to go in the E tier. This dungeon always annoys me. It's one of the only, actually difficult dungeons in the Final Fantasy series. And just if you don't come prepared with enough level ups or enough antidotes or poisona, the enemies actually will kill you here. Like if you don't heal up, if you don't have a good setup, yeah, you're not going to really survive too much. Which that's not the part that I dislike. I like the challenge. It's just the layout of the dungeon. It's just weird. It just is not very intuitive. There's a bunch of empty rooms and stuff. Like, this is a lot. Like, if you think Final Fantasy 2 is bad, there's just so much crap in this place. Like, it's not even funny. At least those empty rooms to me were kind of funny because I was like, what the frick is wrong with this game right now? But, this is just a maze-like dungeon of absolute crap and half. So I just don't like the maze-like garbage of the Marsh Cave. But the Pisco Demons aren't the worst boss fight ever. I do think it's fun and absolutely get owned if you face 4 Pisco Demons in a row. So this is one of them. The Pisco Demons is honestly probably one of the hardest boss fights in this game because at that point you don't have temper and haste. I mean, you do have temper and haste, but you just don't have a lot of health and stuff. And yeah, I think the Pisco Demons is one of the hardest boss fights in the game. That's kind of funny, but yeah. And honestly, there's a ton of enemy encounters. The structure is confusing, and it's nothing too special. It's just a cave. I mean, the green aesthetic does make it a little bit cool and memorable, but this is annoying. Like, it's just an annoying dungeon. I get why some people might like it, but nope, I don't like it. All right, let's move into the good old Western Keep, which is like a nothing dungeon, but it doesn't annoy me as much as Marsh Cave, so I'm going to give it the D tier. It's just, you literally walk in there, and you fight Astos. Like, it's the Chaos Shrine, but without the iconicness of it and all that stuff. And the aesthetic is definitely not as good. All you do is you fight Astos, the evil elf, and yeah, you just kill him. And the instant death attacks are a little bit annoying, but the problem is he's just so easy. Like, you use temper and haste on your fighter or warrior or whatever, and then your monk, like, you've one-shotted him basically. Like, he's dead. And you get the Mystic Key, you can come back, get a few more treasure boxes, but like, there's just really nothing. This is a nothing dungeon all around, but at least it isn't annoying, so, that's something. All right, the Cavern of Earth. I'm a little mixed on this dungeon. So, first of all, it's home to one of the four fiends, which does give it some extra bonus points for me. It's another cave, which is fun. And there's lots of treasures. There's the coral sword, more gil than your grandma's M&Ms at Christmas time, you know, like that crap. This cave also has one of the best grinding spots in the game, other than the Peninsula of Power, the Hall of Gigas. You fight a battle every step there, making it pretty good for gaining experience, but also really annoying if you just get there. Also, the vampire is like the easiest boss ever, and like 2 hours later, you're fighting like 12 of them in one battle. It's just, The Lich fight is pretty good, and it's a pretty fun fight, but I don't know. You know, I'm going to put it in the big reason that I'm not putting this in like the B or the A tier. I'm going to put it in the C tier. Is because you have to run through the dungeon twice. You have to walk all the way back through it after you fight the vampire, which is just absolute BS. Like, whoever thought of that, I'm sorry, but yeah, you're just trying to pad out the runtime for the NES. They really should have changed that in the newer versions, but you know, whatever. Okay, the Earthgift Shrine. I think this place is pretty cool. It's the first PSP bonus dungeon, and there's 5 floors, quite a few different areas. There's a purple forest, which I think is iconic. Just a great, like, vibe. I think it's super memorable, that forest area, in my opinion. The encounters are pretty easy. You have to go through it 4 times to fight all the bosses, but there's only 5 floors, so it's not too bad. It's not like Earthgift Shrine where it feels super annoying. So yeah, or you can just save the game and fight all 4 if you just want to try it out. Because to be fair, like, the drops are not all that good. So yeah, that's what I did. But it's a good introduction of the bonus dungeons and the PSP version and the GBA version. And it is a bit repetitive, but it has some good items, and it's fun. Like, if you go there right after beating Lich, yeah, you'll get some good rewards that you'll carry on with for a couple hours of the game. So yeah, I'm going to give the Earthgift Shrine a solid A. I do think it is a good dungeon. Maybe A. No, I think I'll give it a high B. I think this actually deserves a B. This kind of doesn't. But, you know, iconicness and all that. Yeah, I think the Earthgift Shrine is a pretty solid dungeon. Alright, the Ice Cavern's going straight to the F tier. I freaking hate this place. Like, the Marsh Cave at least has some redeeming qualities, like the Pisco Demons and the challenge to it. But the Cavern of Ice is just so frustrating. There's a point near the end of the dungeon where there's just a staircase, and it takes you out of the dungeon. Like, there's no indication whatsoever that there's not a sign or NPC or anything that's like, oh, this is out of the dungeon. So you might just walk out of the freaking dungeon, and now you're back on the world map. Now, in the PSP version, maybe you saved a bunch, you could just load your game, whatever. But if you're playing like the NES version or something, that's just so bad. Yeah, it's just, ugh. And there's also just so many things that petrify you. Too many insta-killing dark wizards, too many pitfalls, too many random things, and the Evil Eye mini-boss is like the literal easiest thing ever. It's way too easy, way easier than normal enemy encounters, and it's just an annoying cave. At least you get the airship here, but otherwise this is just crap-tastic. As John Adams would say, it is a crapulous mess. Alright, let's move on to the next dungeon, which is the Citadel of Trials, which is like so bad that it's good and kind of goofy all at the same time. So, you know what? I'm going to give the Citadel of Trials a solid, I'm going to give it a solid high B tier. It's an optional dungeon, but it is in the original game, and it gives you the ability to upgrade your party members into their cool versions. Yeah, this place has a bunch of warp tiles, and yes, you're going to have to go through the dungeon a bit, and just they might take you back to the beginning and stuff, but it's kind of fun to figure it out. It's not too bad. There's some good places to level grind here. You also get the gauntlets here, which is the first item that lets you cast magic for no MP, so that's sick. Freaking love that. That's probably my favorite part about this dungeon, to be honest, getting those gauntlets. But yeah, this is a good dungeon as a whole. It's not amazing, but it's pretty iconic, and getting that rat tail at the end is just super rewarding. So yeah, And it's not annoying. Like, it will take you like 15 minutes, like, even if you restart it. Like, it is a pretty short dungeon. So it's not even, yeah, it's not quite as annoying as like this would be. Okay, Mount Gulg is absolute fire. Definitely a pretty good. Okay, that was a stupid absolute fire. That sounded really dumb. Okay, anyway, Mount Gulg is pretty good. I'm gonna give it a solid B tier. Yep, we are having a lot of B tier ones right now. I'm gonna give it, yeah, B tier below. You know, actually, I think I'm gonna move. I know this is like so silly, but just those 4 bosses, actually, just any place that has 4 bosses, I think serves a little bit higher. So I want to give that A tier. And Mount Gulg, I'm going to give top a B tier above Citadel of Trials. You get to fight Merilith here. It's certainly more interesting than the Cavern of Earth. The Lava Tiles is interesting. There's some good scripted encounters here. And it's not that big of a challenge, especially if you run the Ice Cavern Citadel of Trials before you come here. Then it's just a pretty easy dungeon. But, that's usually the way I run the game because, I like my job upgrades. But, this is not a bad dungeon in any way the word. It's a pretty good dungeon as a whole. All right, for the Hellfire Chasm, this is a pretty epic dungeon. So, the chasm is unlocked after slaying Merilith, and it is pretty similar to Mount Gulg being like another fire dungeon. But there are also some pretty unique floors where you like go on like a pseudo world map, which is kind of fun actually. So that's cool. The Earthgift Shrine, you have to go through instead of the Earthgift Shrine where you have to go through 4 times of 5 floors. If you want to get all the rewards here, you have to go through 10 floors twice. But it's not too bad, and there's also way more level variety here. Like, if you want to play all the different levels that are available in Hellfire Chasm just because it's like randomized, then you'll have to probably play through twice anyway. So you'll probably see some crazy new stuff the second time around. It's pretty good. The FF4 bosses are definitely a step up from the FF3 bosses. You get to fight the 4 fiends from FF4, which is awesome, and you get the Braveheart and the Kikuichi Manji from these. So yeah, that's pretty nice. So yeah, I like the Hellfire Chasm. It's a pretty dang good dungeon. It's nothing like absolutely gas or anything, but like it's top tier. It's not like, I don't know, like a freaking Zelda dungeon or anything, but it's good. I'm gonna put it top A tier. I'm gonna give it. It's about as good as this one. It's a bit more unique, but it also feels a little more. I don't know. Some of the floors are just a lot longer in the Hellfire Chasm versus the Earthgift Shrine, so I don't think it's like a S tier where I'm like, oh wow, it's way better. It is definitely better, but not like leagues ahead. Oh, right, the Sunken Shrine. So this place is iconic. The music is amazing. It is the home of Kraken. What I do like is you start on like the middle of the dungeon, so you have to go down to get. So you have to go up to get the Rosetta Stone and go down to get the Kraken, which are very different objectives, and that's cool. There's just a lot of different staircases and stuff. The atmosphere here is fantastic. The battles aren't too repetitive. They're usually like smaller battles, so that's not too bad. You get a lot of gil that you can spend on level 7, level 8 spells. Kraken is definitely one of the better fiends to fight, if not probably my favorite fiend of the 4. It's definitely my favorite of the 4 shrine, not shrines. What am I saying? My favorite of the 4 fiend shrines. And you know what? I think I'm going to toss it right up at the top of A tier. I think it's the best of the main dungeons. So, yeah. All right, next we get into the... Yeah, I really do like the additional PSP dungeons. The Lifespring Grotto is an absolute gas dungeon. I'm still sad that this is not in the Pixel remaster, but yeah, it's just awesome. The Lifespring Grotto is just a 20 floor behemoth of a dungeon. Technically, you have to play through it twice if you want to fight Omega and Shinru, but luckily, I feel like most people are either going to have a really good thief or a really good warrior. I feel like I usually don't run thief and warrior anyway, so I usually just save and then just fight one of them. So, and besides, you can get better equipment later, so I just like saving and then fighting them. But anyway, Lifespring Grotto, you've got your good old floors, you've got your treasure floors, your random encounter floors, floating towns with invisible walkways, which is fun. It's not as annoying as it sounds. Dark Bahamut's Lair, flooded towns, mermaid villages. There's just so much to see here. And the bosses at the end are actually, unironically, some of the hardest super bosses in the series if you're not prepared. Like, if you don't have a white mage, you might not even be able to beat these guys. Omega and Shinryu, they're the fights from FF5, and honestly, I think they're quite a bit harder here than in FF5, because FF5 is just such a a breakable game, whereas this game is just simple. So you might actually get owned by Omega and Shinryu here. So yeah, I really do like that there's some difficult bosses here. So yeah, I really like this dungeon. I'm going to throw it right up in the S tier, maybe move it up to S plus later. But yeah, I think the Lifespring Grotto is definitely a slept on dungeon, and yeah, it's just really fun. All right, next we move into the Waterfall Cavern, which is about as basic and boring as you can get. At least it's short and boring and not long and boring. So we're going to throw it at low C tier. It's just the epitome of basic. It's just a little maze with a with one treasure chest in it. Yeah, you just find a robot, he gives you the warp cube, and then the dungeon is over. It's not annoying, but it's nothing too good. You know, actually, I'm going to throw this into the D and Western Keep into C, because Western Keep has a boss fight, and it's not like annoying. So yeah, I'll put that in C. But yeah, Waterfall Cavern is just a definition of just mid. It's nothing too special. All right, this next dungeon is the Mirage Tower, which layout-wise is pretty mid, but the aesthetic here is perhaps the best in the entire game. There's 3 floors. It's really quick. All you really do here is warp to the Flying Fortress and get some equipment and fight some interesting enemies. But yeah, it's just a short dungeon found in the middle of the massive desert. But yeah, this is probably the coolest looking dungeon in the game, which is going to give us some brownie points for me, and there's nothing annoying about it. So yeah, I think it's a solid dungeon. I'm going to throw it at the top of C tier. There's not a boss or anything, but that aesthetic and the fact that it's just purely unannoying makes it top the Cavern of Earth, in my opinion. All right, next we've got the Flying Fortress, one of the coolest dungeons in the game, for sure. It's got a pretty epic aesthetic. It's got a super boss in the form of Death Machine or War Mech, depending on what version you're playing. It gives you the Adamantite, which makes one of the best swords in the game. You fight. Yeah, the aesthetic here is absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, the time map fight is a little too easy at this point because you're just broken. So, yeah, if you just, yeah, it is definitely one of the best dungeons in FF1, so I'm gonna throw it up in the A tier. Yeah, you know, I might move a couple things around. I might I might move one of these up to S or one of these down to B, but we'll see. All right, next we have the Whisperwind Cove. You know, actually, I'm moving Lifespring Grotto up to S plus. Just saying. All right, next we have the Whisperwind Cove. Easily one of the best dungeons in the game. It's the final of the 4 Souls of Chaos dungeons, FF1. It's the longest one. You only have to go through it once, which is a big plus if you want to get everything, so that's nice. You're fighting a Final Fantasy VI bosses here. There's lore, treasure, a bunch of stuff you want in the dungeon. Randomly generated shops with cool items that you can purchase that are pretty rare. Awesome world map areas like in the Hellfire Cavern, and you just get to play some like hide and seek with some kids on one of the floors, which is kind of hilarious. Yeah, and it is really cool, and I just think it's a pretty great dungeon all around. Now, the reason I'm not going to put it in the S plus tier, unlike the Lifespring Grotto, is because the final boss, the Death Gaze, is just so much easier than Omega and Shinryu. Like, it's kind of hilarious how much easier. If you just cast a null death spell, it's pretty much just super easy to cheese. So, yeah, I do think that the Lifespring Grotto has it beat. Yes, the Whisperwind Cove has some better floors and stuff, and you only have to run it once. But as I said, you usually don't even need the drops of the Lifespring Grotto. It's more for the challenge of the bosses. So yeah, I think those bosses, for me, carry the Lifespring Grotto above the Whisperwind Cove. But that's just my opinion. All right, next we have the Chaos Shrine Pass, which is the true final dungeon of the game. You know, I'm going to throw this in the S+ tier. Yeah, I might throw it. Do I want to put it above or below? Yeah, you know, I think I might just have to throw it at the top. I know that might be basic. No, I'm gonna put Lifespring Grotto above. I really love the challenge of those balls. Nope. I'm putting this on top. At least for now. We'll see if the other one beats it. But yeah, you get it. This is the end of the game. You actually get a decent story plot twist at the end. It's cool that you're beating the game in the same dungeon as the first dungeon, which is the Chaos Shrine. Present, you get to go to the past and beat up Garland, which is awesome. You get to refight the fiends, but they're harder this time around. You find a great sword. The final boss fight is as great as ever. One of my favorite final boss fights in the series to this day. Yeah, this awesome. Every floor is themed based on what the fiend is, so you fight enemies related to the fiend there, which is awesome. But yeah, the Chaos Shrine is just a great final dungeon, and definitely like a pretty good one for the series. I'd say it's like upper half. Like there are some pretty good final dungeons in this series, but I still think the Chaos Shrine stands as one of the best. All right, next we move into the Labryinth of Time, the final dungeon on this list. And whereas all these other bonus dungeons were in the GBA version, this is only in the PSP version of the game, the 20th Anniversary Edition. And this game is, this place is absolutely crazy. You know what? I'm going to have to move the Lifespring Grotto down to S yet again. The Labryinth of Time is just... There's so much stuff that you can do here. There's 30 challenges, and you can replay it as many times as you want to get a bunch of pieces of equipment. Now, did I replay it? No, but do I recommend replaying it if you want to get all the best gear in the game? Yeah, sure. Every time you run through, you encounter like 7 to 10 of the challenges. So it is a little annoying because you can get up to 8 different equipment pieces here. So yeah, that is pretty annoying. But how it works is you sacrifice your abilities to gain more time to beat the boss. Actually, you know what? I think this is probably the best dungeon in the game. No, but no, I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to keep it in second place. Yeah, you sacrifice your abilities to gain more time, and yeah, every time you beat it, beat the challenges, you fight a different version of the boss Cronodia, which is a great fight, and you get a different reward every time. Yeah, I do think that it is a little annoying. The reason I'm not going to put it at the top is because while it's a great concept, some of the floors are just kind of boring. And if you want to get all the pieces of equipment, if you're a completionist, this is a nightmare for completionists because you have to run through it at least like 8 times. So yeah, that is pretty annoying. But if you're just like a casual player who just wants to get a couple good items for their best dude or their best gal in their party, yeah, you know, this is a pretty good dungeon. And Cronodia is definitely one of the best bosses in the game. In fact, I think I might argue that Cronodia is the best. Yeah, Cronodia is the best boss in the entire game. So that is awesome. However, I just think the iconicness of the Chaos Shrine is going to beat it out for me, and the fact it has the most boss fights of any of the places, although there are a lot of boss refights. So, you know, I'm starting to doubt myself a little bit here, but I think this is a fair ranking. Yeah, I think Cronodia is more fun than Omega and Shinryu put together. So yeah, that is nice. That will move it up to the S+ for me. And yeah, I think that there's just more variety to the floors than in the GBA dungeons. But overall, I think that the atmosphere and just the finality there is to the Chaos Shrine Past does put it at the top of the list. So yeah, let me know what you think of this list down below. Have you played the PSP and GBA versions? Let me know what you think of the dungeons exclusive there. If you haven't played those versions, I highly recommend you check them out. If you're a fan of this game, they are actually a pretty fun challenge, and the boss fights are fantastic. The floors might get a little repetitive to some, but yeah, I think they are worthy contenders for, like, obviously, as you see, like 3 of the optional dungeons are taking like the top of this list. So yeah, if you enjoy Final Fantasy 1, I highly recommend the PSP version. If you've only checked out the Pixel Remaster or the original or like the Wonder Swan release, like I think the PSP version is still easily the definitive version of this day. And you know, you can run it on an emulator. Like if you have already, my credo is if you already have the game, why not emulate a different version of said game, especially if it's cheaper. So yeah, I think if you just want to emulate this game sometime, try it out. Yeah, that would be a great decision because I think FF1 on the PSP is absolutely peak. So yeah, thank you all for watching this video and have a fantastic day. Peace out, RPG fans.